If you remember catching these titles at drive-ins or late-night black and white TV, you'll know the power and controversy classic films once carried. In 1950s America, movie screens lit up with glamour, but not everything made it past the censors. From clever cartoons to brutal crime sagas, Warner Bros. Often tested the limits of Hollywood's moral code and paid the price. Number 5. Speedy Gonzales cartoons. In the mid-1950s, Warner Bros. Introduced Speedy Gonzales, the fastest mouse in all Mexico, in 1955. At first embraced for his wit and heroism, the character later drew criticism for perpetuating ethnic stereotypes, particularly his exaggerated accent, sombrero, and portrayal of other Mexican mice as slow-moving or lazy. In response to evolving standards of cultural sensitivity, Cartoon Network removed Speedy cartoons from its US schedule between 1999 and 2002, citing concerns over offensive imagery. This move prompted an unexpected response. Rather than applause, the decision sparked outrage among Hispanic viewers and Latino organizations such as the League of United Latin American Citizens, who defended Speedy as a positive cultural icon, clever, triumphant, and one of the few mainstream representations of a Mexican hero. The outcry led to the character's reinstatement in 2002. This episode shows how representation can be both powerful and complicated. For many in Mexico and the US, Speedy Gonzales wasn't just a stereotype. He was a clever underdog, outsmarting the system. After public outcry, Warner Bros. Reinstated the cartoons and added historical disclaimers to DVD collections. The Speedy Gonzales debate reveals how media once seen as offensive can later be embraced by the very communities it portrayed, proving that cultural context and audience sentiment evolve, and so does what we choose to preserve. And while an animated mouse stirred cultural debate, the final film on our list tackled something far more shocking. Watch till the end to revisit the Warner Bros. Gangster drama so violent it was banned outright, not for politics or race, but sheer brutality. You may even recall hearing about the uproar in newspapers or around your neighborhood movie house. But we're gonna move on to number 4, Band of Angels. Starring Clark Gable, a commanding presence in classic Hollywood, Band of Angels ventures into the complexities of race and forbidden love in the post-Civil War South. Adapted from Robert Penn Warren's 1955 novel, the film centers on Amantha Starr, who discovers after her father's death that she has black ancestry and is sold into slavery. Clark Gable's character repurchases her and treats her with a measure of dignity, though the story remains deeply flawed in its depiction of race and caste. State and local censorship boards in the South, particularly in Memphis, required edits to Band of Angels before it could be exhibited. The Memphis board especially objected to scenes involving physical contact between a black character and a white woman. To meet the standards of the production code, also known as Hays Code, Warner Bros. Also made changes that softened the film's portrayal of interracial romance and racial conflict. Despite Clark Gable's marquee appeal, Band of Angels was met with largely negative reviews. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times called it a flamboyant melodrama with nary a thoughtful reflection, and many critics unfavorably compared it to Gone with the Wind. Later, viewers praised Sidney Poitier's performance, but found the film's handling of race patronizing, even for the 1950s. Ultimately, Band of Angels had gained little traction in retrospectives. It stands as a lesson that even earnest attempts to address racial injustice could falter under the era's moral structures and under the heavy hand of censorship. If this brings back memories of crowded movie houses or grainy TV broadcasts, why not subscribe? These stories shape generations, and we're here to remember them. While Band of Angels struggled to portray race and identity through a melodramatic lens, an upcoming film in this video took a bolder step, confronting the Ku Klux Klan on screen in a time where few dared to speak its name. And if you could remember the tension of post-war newsreels, this next entry might strike a deeper chord. Back when the Warner Bros. Logo meant gritty drama and moral conflict, few films hit harder than this adaptation of a Tennessee Williams classic. Number 3, A Streetcar Named Desire. Featuring Marlon Brando in his breakout film role, A Streetcar Named Desire was adapted from Tennessee Williams' acclaimed play and examined themes of domestic mental illness and sexual violence. Hollywood at the time was governed by the production Hays Code, a strict moral framework enforced from 1934 until the late 1960s, requiring Warner Bros. To soften dialogues, obscure visual depictions of intimacy, and omit or revise key references to sensuality and same-sex attraction. In the 1950s, Warner Bros. Altered A Streetcar Named Desire to satisfy the production code, softening references to homosexuality, Blanche's past, and Stanley's assault. ensuring immoral acts were implied, not shown, and that the perpetrator faced narrative consequences. When Warner Bros. Later rediscovered the excised footage in archive canisters during the early 1990s, approximately 3 to 5 minutes of previously suppressed dialogue and visual material were restored for a director-approved edition released in 1993. These restored scenes enriched the storyline by underscoring Blanche's emotional fragility, Stanley's aggression, and Stella's conflicted desire, reclaiming the intensity that originally defined the play. Despite its censorship, A Streetcar Named Desire premiered in September of 1951 to critical acclaim and became one of the year's top box office successes. It earned 12 Academy Award nominations and won 4 Oscars, including acting awards for Vivien Leigh, Kim Hunter, and Karl Malden. In 1999, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry for its cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. The censorship imposed by the Hays Code resulted in a film that was more restrained than its source material, but the restored version offers a valuable glimpse of the original vision, revealing how powerful adult storytelling survived within, and ultimately pushed beyond restrictive studio regulation. Number 2. Storm Warning. Now let us now turn to Storm Warning, one of the last few mainstream Warner Bros. Films of its era to address the Ku Klux Klan directly. Released in early 1951, it stars Ginger Rogers and Ronald Reagan, with Doris Day in a supporting role. The film opens as Marsha Mitchell, a New York fashion model, arrives in a small southern town and witnesses a Klan-led murder of a crusading journalist. Reagan plays a local district attorney who urges her to testify. Despite the town's conspiracy of silence, her brother-in-law is among the perpetrators. This dark depiction of mob violence, hooded rallies, and cross burnings prompted censorship boards in several jurisdictions, including Ohio and Memphis, to demand substantial edits. Local authorities labeled scenes too intense, especially those involving brutality and intimidation. Though its intentions were bold for the period, Storm Warning notably avoids discussing the Klan's racist ideology or its historical campaign of terror against African Americans. Few black characters appear, targeting outsiders rather than a white supremacist faction. Critics at the time offered a tempered response. Time described it as an effective melodrama and a frontal exposition on the Klan, though crafted to avoid alienating Southern audiences by softening regional accents and local color. Later, commentators praised Roger and Reagan's performances, especially Roger's emotionally vulnerable portrayal of a witness under threat, while also noting that the film's reluctance to confront racial prejudice head-on. Ultimately, the film struggled at the box office and faded into obscurity, but it stands as a rare early cinematic attempt to depict the Klan in a critical light, albeit through heavy censorship and careful restraint, revealing both the limitations and ambitions of socially aware storytelling in 1950s Hollywood. Our final entry, Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, features James Cagney in one of his most disturbing portrayals, a calculating, ruthless gangster. The film is notorious for its raw portrayal of violence, including a chilling scene where Cagney's character uses a cream pitcher as an instrument of cruelty. While many regional censorship bodies tolerated the film, the Ohio Board of Censors, among the strictest of the era, outright banned it, condemning it as a sordid, sadistic presentation of brutality that depicted explicit steps and commission of crime. Wow. The ban referenced both the film's graphic violence and its depiction of criminal methodology. According to state lawmakers, it was so disturbing that it risked eroding public confidence in law enforcement. Warner Bros. Appealed the decision, but Ohio's rulings remained firm. The controversy traveled beyond local borders, igniting nationwide discussion about cinematic depictions of violence. Critics debated whether audiences could handle such unfiltered portrayals or if the boundaries of acceptability had been overstepped. Though Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye did not reach the full select status of Cagney's celebrated films, it stands as a haunting example of post-war Hollywood's confrontation with brutality and state censorship's determination to resist it. In later years, the film faded into relative obscurity, overshadowed by more acclaimed films and evolving industry standards. However, its bold depiction of evil and the legal battle it inspired rendered it a significant, if unsettling, artifact of American film history, one that highlights the tensions between artistic expression, audience reception, and moral oversight in the 1950s. These 5 Warner Bros. Films, from An Animated Mouse to a brutal gangster saga, illustrate how censorship in the 1950s often reflected deeper social anxieties: race, violence, sexuality, and morality. Though standards have shifted, revisiting these works offers a richer understanding of film history and the cultural forces that shaped it. What do you believe is more dangerous? Confronting violence and prejudice on screen, or avoiding uncomfortable truths altogether? Join the conversation below, and if you value thoughtful explorations of film history, please like, share, and subscribe to rediscover cinema's untold stories.